Don't forget to subscribe for more. The wind blew through the trees as Daniel left town, his face pressed to the bus window, watching the sanctuary shrink in the distance. He could still feel the warmth of Helena's body against his skin, the taste of her name in his mouth. Everything had changed. And yet, he carried it all with him. Every kiss, every look, every secret night that had made him feel more alive than anything in his young life ever had. Meanwhile, Helena stood at the altar once more alone. She had traded her robe for simple clothing now, no longer Sister Helena, just Helena Hayes. Disgraced in the eyes of the community, yes, but not in her own. Because what had grown between her and Daniel had not been perverse. It had been passion, blooming from grief and silence, a fire lit in the darkest moment. She no longer belonged to the church, but she still returned to the empty chapel, lighting candles no one asked for. Each one was a memory, a prayer, a whisper to the night that their love had mattered. She had kept Daniel's last letter, folded carefully in her bedside drawer. You saved me. I know the world won't understand, but I do. I'll never forget you, Helena. Maybe one day, when the world stops caring about rules and names and titles, we'll find each other again. Until then, keep the sanctuary alive in your heart. I'll do the same. Months turned to years. Daniel grew into a man, shaped by heartbreak, sharpened by memory. He worked in construction, went to college at night, and kept himself. But in the quiet hours, when the stars appeared and the sky whispered of her, he thought of Helena. He didn't chase flings or force himself into forgetting. Instead, he let the memory of her guide him, like a compass that always pointed towards something real, something pure, even if it had been born in fire. Then, for years later, fate intervened. Daniel returned to his hometown to bury his uncle. He had no plans to stay. He only wanted to pay respects and leave before the weight of his past settled in again. But walking through the old town square, he saw her, Helena, standing outside a bookstore, her hair pulled up, a soft dress flowing around her legs. She looked different, lighter, yet still marked by the past. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, the world fell away. Daniel, she whispered, stunned. He crossed the street without a word, pulling her into a hug that said everything words couldn't. Her arms wrapped around him, like she'd never let go. You're here, she said into his shoulder, her voice breaking. I told you, he said, pulling back just enough to look into her eyes. I'd never forget. They walked for hours, hands brushing, hearts racing again with familiar rhythm. He told her about his life since he'd left. She told him she worked part-time at the bookstore now, writing a memoir she hadn't let anyone read. They sat beneath a tree near the chapel ruins, where the sanctuary had once stood. The building had caught fire 2 years after the scandal. No one rebuilt it. It's gone, she said quietly. He looked at the burnt remnants. No, it's not. It lives here. He placed a hand to his chest, then gently to hers. And here. Helena felt the fire return, not just in memory, but in real time. Daniel wasn't the teenager she'd known anymore. He was a man, his jaw more defined, his gaze bolder. But that tender heart, the one that once reached for hers in the darkness, that remained. They went to her home that evening. She lived in a small cottage now, surrounded by lavender and quiet. When he stepped inside, he smiled. It smells like you, he said. Soft. Peaceful. They stood in the hallway, inches apart, the air crackling again. Daniel, she whispered, this shouldn't happen again. Why not? He asked, stepping closer. I'm not a boy anymore. And you're not a nun. We're just two people who once loved each other and maybe still do. She looked at him, eyes wide with conflict. It's still a line we shouldn't cross. Then let me erase the line. He kissed her, soft at first, seeking permission. Her lips responded before her thoughts could argue. It wasn't lust that drove them. It was the reunion of souls who had waited too long, who had been torn apart not by hate, but by shame and fear. Their bodies rediscovered one another like a sacred song played again after years of silence. He undressed her slowly, reverently, kissing every scar, every secret. She ran her hands through his hair, over his chest, memorizing the changes and still seeing the heart beneath. They made love like it was a homecoming, slow, filled with whispered names, promises, breathless gasps. Their fingers laced as their bodies moved, two rivers meeting again after being forced apart. Afterward, they lay tangled in the sheets, facing one another, a single candle burning on the nightstand. "Stay," she whispered. "I wasn't going anywhere." He reached into his bag and pulled out a folded envelope, his mother's rosary tucked inside. "I found this last week," he said. "She would have wanted you to have it." Helena stared at the rosary. "I haven't prayed in years." "Maybe tonight we can start again," he said. "Not with words, just with us." And so they did. Helena and Daniel didn't care what the world thought anymore. They built their own sanctuary, one of books and sunlight, of morning coffee and shared glances. They wrote their own vows. They planted lavender. They turned old pain into new beginnings. And every night, when the wind blew and the candle flickered, they held each other close, whispering secrets only they understood. The world never fully forgave them, but love did.